So we are now working on a new terrain project. We're doing the Crashed Vertibird as provided from Modiphius. This is not the 3D printed version, this is the actual resin variant you can buy from them. So these are all separate pieces with the exception of the large hull. The wing is kind of optional if you want to have it attached or not, so they do print details or mold details on the inside. But to fit it snugly you have to file those down, and then I've pinned the wing in because I like the way it looks with that instead of just having the wing laying elsewhere. I've used a gray primer for this since this is primarily metal. We've got one engine pod, and what I'm probably going to do is attach a magnet and maybe make it so I can pop that on there as needed. I need to go ahead and paint or remove so it's designed to lay flat since it's supposed to lay off to the side, so it's kind of an optional thing. Again, you can mount or unmount it. I may just actually permanently mount it instead of doing the magnet, depending on how fancy I'm feeling. And then the other wing, most of it intact, tail section, and just a really, just random rubble pile that does have a bit of one of the rotor blades. But obviously this is the largest piece, and it really gives you a sense of scale looking at how big this is. Now I have printed out at full size in MDF the assembled Vertibird. So I'm going to use the same colors that I used for this, so it's going to be a Brotherhood of Steel variant based on the color scheme from Fallout 76 is what I used. So I'm going to use my airbrush first, and we're going to use some salt weathering on this. So I'm going to show you the salt weathering technique. The first part of that is prepping what is the undercoat, and it's a little backwards in your head. The rust is not going to sit on the metal, the rust is going to be the base layer. So I'm going to start off with this Vallejo Air Orange Rust, and I'm going to do all these pieces, but I'll do most of them off camera. And what I'm going to do is just focus on this tail section on camera. That'll be the best, I think, to show everyone. And so as part of the tail piece, you can actually punch out this gap here. I'm not going to bother with that. I think it'll wind up looking really rough. I'm just going to paint it black where it's supposed to be see-through, and we'll leave it at that. But yes, so Vallejo Air Orange Rush is going to form rust, not rush. It's going to form our basic coat. Alright, so I'm not going for an even color on this. This is supposed to be patchwork rust when we get past the salt stage. So I've kind of let it pool, I've let there be heavier spots. So we're pretty much where I want it to be for this particular piece. Now, in addition, I'm going to be applying Vallejo Wash Dark Rust and regular rust. And we're just going to wait for this top layer to dry, and then we'll just go in and we'll do some patchwork splotching of this onto it. So we'll be back when it dries, and we will apply the washes to it. Alright, so as you can see, we got a lot of our rust applied all over. Again, I'm not going for any even coating. This is all just to get an initial application. So now we're going to go ahead and start applying our rust. So I'm going to start with the dark rust, and then I'll do the light after. And rather than paint this on, because I'm not going for a wash in this case, I kind of want to spludge it on. So all I'm using is just a bit of paper towel. We're going to take some and we're just going to kind of spot it like this. So normally I would just do the one piece I'm working on and the rest off camera, but this is all pretty easy. Then once it starts to run out, again, we're just doing some splotch work. So, we're going to let that dry, and once it dries, we're going to seal it. And the reason we're going to seal it is because once it's sealed, we'll be using just plain water to adhere salt to the model itself. And since we use water-soluble paints in the modeling cases, we want to make sure that we have a good seal over it so that when we come back, the water doesn't damage the coat underneath. And when we flake off the salt, we don't want it to take the primer and everything with it as well. Which may still happen, but giving a nice seal at the stage we're at right now should do good. Alright, so we're back, and as you can see, I've already been applying the salt to the other pieces. So we're going to do our primary test piece here last. So what you want to do is just take some water and a brush and just apply it to wherever you want. And so we're just getting water all over this. And this is just so that the salt will adhere. And as I said, since we went in and applied that sealant, we shouldn't lose any of our paint. There may be some, and we'll fix those by, like, if it goes down to like the primer and beyond, what I usually do is I will add metal to it, just so like it's a raw metallic piece. Alright, so this is enough at this point. And then we're just going to set this aside and dry. Now, for the salt mixture, what I actually do is I mix kosher salt, which is the larger grains, and regular table salt for the smaller grains. So you get a nice variety in flakes. And so what this is going to do is dry, and it will stick to the model. Then we'll apply a top layer of paint over that. And then once that paint's dry, we just go back in with a stiff bristled brush, toothbrush, something like that, and just knock the salt off. And that will leave a nice patina on it. So we're going to let this dry, and then we'll be back to apply our top coat. And we will lose a lot of salt when we do this. This method's really only usable with an airbrush. And so you're going to have the force of the paint coming out of the airbrush is going to knock off some of that salt, which is why we've gone pretty heavy on it. That, and it's a crashed ruin. Crashed ruins should have a lot of wear and tear like this. So we'll be back once this dries, and we will apply our top coat. Okay, so we are back, and we're going to be, you see all of our salt is nicely crusted now. I left it overnight. So I'm going to go ahead and be painting with the airbrush again, and I'm actually using a contrast black to start with these. Then I'll be going back over with a with the highlighted bits and colors that I want. But for now, just the basic black will be fine. And I'm using contrast because it produces a nice flat color. I'm also doing it over my vat here that to catch any residual salt. I don't really care about the paint getting onto the salt because it's still reusable. It doesn't matter. So let's see how this looks. Okay, so for our tail section, it's pretty much how I want it to go. Now, as you see, a lot of the salt will flake off. You just need to be careful that you still keep some, and sometimes when it flakes, if you're going to look at this, you'll see how the effect is already going to look. So those blew off after the paint was already on, and you can see that nice chipped effect going on now. So I'm going to finish up the rest of the pieces in black, and then we'll move on to the red highlights. Okay, so I have gone ahead and applied my different colors, and now we are ready for what I consider anyway to be the fun part. And this is where we go in and remove the salt itself and see the fun underneath. So I've got this fairly big brush, and we're just going to go in and see the magic. So already, just on this one, you can see how that comes out. You get that nice, really pitted effect. I may have to come back with a stiffer brush to get everything. But yeah, so it's a really nice effect. Now, you may be saying, well, but those parts that weren't underneath the salt are still a little too clean for my like, and this is when you just revert to your standard weathering techniques. So what we'll do in addition is apply a brown wash, rust washes to the areas that are underneath the paint, anything like that, in order to bring it in line. But for a starting point, this is my favorite way of going. So just need to get in here. You can even just take your finger and just wipe at any that might be giving you a lot of trouble. Yeah, so you can see looking pretty good. So I'm going to finish that up, and then what we're going to focus on is just painting and picking out the parts of the base before we apply our washes, etc., over the rest of it. Alright, so as we can see, we've got our details added to our ground portions. I've picked out the rubble between stone and metal. I painted the stone in a bolt gun metal, and then dry brushed a silver over it to give it a bit of a sheen. Painted the rocks a dark gray with a light gray dry brush over, and our ground is done in our traditional tau ochre. I also went back and did some dry brush silver just on edges and stuff like that to show some wear. Also reapplied some more of the rust wash in a couple spaces that were a little bare, just to kind of give them some texture. So we are all set at that point. I also, one of the fun parts with this is, making it more lore correct. So since I painted this as a Brotherhood of Steel, I added stencil work to both the wings to add the Brotherhood of Steel logo on there. And this is a fun little thing I started doing since I do 3D printing. Is I have a stencil I just 3D printed with my resin printer. and this way I can resize it for different things. And if it gets broke, gets used up too much, I just toss it and print another. So that's a pretty cool use of 3D printing, is that some people might not think of, being able to make your own stencils and that sort of thing. So next up is going to be applying brown wash to the pieces to add to the dinge and also pick out the ground so it looks, shows all the rubble a bit better. I won't be applying it to the windows. So after we apply the Agrax, we're going to go ahead and then we'll seal it and pretty much be done. But for all of the glass, what I'm going to try doing is applying this Vallejo crackle medium. That way, if it works, it will have some crackle effects on the glass itself, like it's been shattered, and then it can go over with a wash or something like that to pick out those cracks. But next up we'll be just doing that basic brown wash, and we'll see how everything looks. Okay, so our seal's been applied along with our wash and everything, so I've also gone ahead and applied tufts to all the other pieces. So I went ahead and used my Pico Scene static grass because it also has a little bit of the dirt attached to it. So we can finish up our one that is our kind of test model here. So I'm just applying a little bit of PVA glue to one of the tufts, and then I'm just going to go in here and let's see, stick it here. And I'm going to go ahead and use another one. Again, a bit of PVA. And I'm going to apply it right here. And then for the little rock outcroppings that are part of it, I just take a bit of Agrax Earthshade and blend it into the rest of the base, like so. So it all matches now. Okay, so that finishes up this little project. Overall, I think it came out quite nice. I did go ahead and apply magnets to this and to the propeller, so I can have the propeller laying out, or if I want, I can just set it magnetically there. Also means for transport, I can take it off and don't have to worry about it getting broke. As you can see, the main hull, I've got a lot of static grass in and out of it, and our crackle medium has put broken pieces quite nicely on the glass itself. I may apply some other static grass maybe in this area as well after I do another wash, but for now I'm calling this done. Yep, and so that is how to salt weather for some nice rust effects. Modiphius just released a new STL pack for Nuka World parking lot. Ignoring the Nuka World part of it, it comes with Fallout buses, ruined and intact, as well as the pickup truck. So right there, it's worth it just for to have additional vehicles. So that means we've now got bus, the truck, and the Corvega sedan, the coupe, and then a sports model as well. So we've got 5 vehicles. Those will look really good on some streets. So I'll be doing probably a 3D printing tutorial for at least the truck. So I'll cover things like taking the STL files, applying supports if you need to. I believe these are pre-supported, so you don't actually have to. Slicing the model, running the print, and then post-processing as well. But yes, hope you enjoy, and we'll catch you next time.